I've been a part of like three fundraisers, I would say, until now. One was
Yeah.
completely failed. One was, I would say, like a moderate success, and one was super successful. We just applied on a whim. And the YC interview with Tom was literally everything in your YC application is good, but I just can't believe that you're getting $20,000 from big Indian enterprises with this product with zero marketing spend. We raised around $250,000 completely from inbound people giving us money. People were like, hey, we want to get on a call with you. We were like, we are not taking calls before 17th November. And when we said that to enough people, four or five of them actually just gave us money. They were like, just take these checks because if you're not taking calls, it probably means that you will definitely, when you take calls, you'll raise very quickly. That gives a lot of confidence, actually. 20th November, we had our first call. And 20th November is when we closed the 6.3 million fundraise.
We were building industrial solutions and doing things which typically doesn't sit well with a 21, 22-year-old founder at that time. I was 22, I'm 25 right now. So we were building from Ahmedabad, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very traditional Dandha-driven place where people talk about unit economics from day one, working capital from day one. You know, even in their IC, it was like when we walked in, they were very kind enough to say that, look, the business is like there's what to pitch, right? Like there's just some ideas, but we believe in this founder and we like his energy and, you know, we're going to back him.
We were fortunate enough to the very first round, it was a small, I think 300k, 500k kind of round. It happened within like 2 months with just the two of us. I would say it was quite fortunate because we coincidentally were building in a space where there were some very large success stories in Japan. When you're talking without having any concrete pitch, it's like there's less reason for that person to want to talk to you again. The second is that when you're speaking, make sure you speak to everyone in a very condensed time frame. Maiteryas mentioned some revenue numbers, etc. Those are all just supporting, but at the end of the day, it's just the narrative which matters.
So YC sort of just told us, don't make data rooms. They were like, no one in YC should make a data room because if no one has it, then investors can't.
It's also about investor appetite. If you're pitching to Valley VCs who are tier one, have a lot of money and have to deploy that, they'll buy you if it's a hot space without data room. But if you're speaking to a GP who has raised, $50-100 million first fund, second fund, he has to have his gut full of conviction.
Often a VC will pass on you and say that, hey, but I can connect you to a couple more VCs. Beg them not to connect you to a couple more VCs. Right? That is never going to go in the right way. Because the first question you will be asked is, why didn't you go for it, right?
One nuance on it, that almost always not true. I'll give an example. Like currently, we were doing a convertible round for somebody, and we couldn't invest because we were in Indian AIF Cat 2. That guy was a Cayman HQ, and it took a lot more time, right?
Got it.
And
Okay.
I really wanted to make sure that guy gets the money. He was a very high quality founder, and it's deals like this that I pass on to some investor that add value to me. Like, that guy sees like this guy can make good deals. So there are 5 or 6 top investors in my mind whom I want to build goodwill with.
One strong connect is like one strong vouch is better than 10 moderate vouchers. So like getting one person who really likes your company to ask their VC that, hey, these guys are great, go to them. I would optimize for that rather than getting 10 acquaintances to tell their VCs about you.
So first of all of you guys, thanks a lot for making the time. I know all of you are running your own businesses and taking out 1 hour on a Saturday can get quite hectic. Thanks for that. Here, the objective of this podcast is fairly simple. Whenever we go to an event and we get a lot of inbounds from founders across who are very young, they have an interesting idea, they have built an MVP, but they're stuck before they do a first round. So थोड़ा बहुत कोशिश करते हैं, they put their own money, they may not take a job for a year, but then they lose motivation and just drop out, right? And they're fairly not even clear on the basic aspects of a lot of things. So we have a community of 100 founders where the key question is, how do I raise my first check? Like, all the other GAN that you give me on hiring and everything is fine, but unless I am able to do this, nothing else matters, right? And all 3 of you, Neal is part of Capria portfolio, Abhilash and Maiteryas, we've had a lot of interactions. I've learned a lot from you guys. And I thought what better not to actually have all 3 of you talk about your journeys and we can learn a lot from that. So I'll start with you, Maitreya. Maitreya has recently raised his round, most recent out of all 3. So maybe the best way, Maitreya, is that if you could just walk us through your journey. We'll go on one by one and I'll just outline what I'm looking forward to, right? So I think I first met Maitreya when he was thinking of quitting his job and he was toying around with the idea of healthcare fairly, I think, in the very early stages, right? From there, if you could just talk me through a little bit on I mean, I know Johnny a little bit, but for the benefit of larger audience and Neil and Abhilash as well, how when you were quitting your job, what was the mindset? Like, did you have an idea in head, and then how did you progress from there to the refined version of the idea you have right now? You went from 3, 4 kind of pivots and idea changes in between, and then how did you think about the first raise? Right? Did you already start reaching out when you are thinking about the idea? When did you know that you have to raise? How did you reside the amount? And then, how do you reach out and how did that first check happen? Now, when I say first check, this is not your first institutional check. It would be a first angel as well. And then we'll talk about your recent round of $6 million as well. Then how did you get to that, right? So I'll leave it to you, Matthew, if you can start the introduction because Abhilash and Neil are also not familiar.
Sure, sure. And please ask me any questions or any clarifications if you want. Yeah, so I had a couple of ideas when I was working in Probo. Thought that I'd got a good taste of starting up while in Probo working on new initiatives, and thought I wanted to take the jump. Health tech was just like a like one of those ideas which you've seen in person, something that is not working well. And for my case, it was like nurses in like for home healthcare, like a family in the family, grandparents and all the sort of difficulties that you go through to find the right nurse, and you automatically think that tech can solve it. Right? I think it's very basic to think that there is a problem, put in tech, it will be solved. So that was the original idea which we started thinking about. Worked with a few friends, of course, still in our jobs. And in that process, I got into EF. So I think Entrepreneur First is one of those few accelerators or like within India itself, like places where you can validate your idea, get more confidence on what you're doing, help find a co-founder and all of that. And that was sort of the confidence I needed to quit my job. I'm a little less risk averse in general. And when I got into EF, I thought, chalo, let's try and build this.
Sorry, by
But
the way, just
yeah.
a quick question there. Like, when you're looking at EF, there's a lot more other options as well, right? You could have just quit your job and then ideated and then, directly applied to IC, or you would have thought of Antler or SPC or others as well. Just curious on why entrepreneur first, or you just thought ki, was the first thing that came your way, you have a friend, or just curious there.
So very honestly, even when I quit my job, I wasn't sure if I would go to EF, but and that's why I never really searched out for these accelerators or anything. But getting into EF, I vibed with Dhruv. You might know Dhruv, Tyagi, and the EF team. I thought it was for me at that time it was like a backup option that if I quit. And I want to start up, but the current co-founder thing doesn't work out, or I don't find the confidence in this idea. EF is like a great confidence booster that there's a place where I can be with fellow minded people. So for me, it wasn't very active. It was almost like someone reached out to me and it made sense at that point of time. Um, so that's how EF worked. When I quit my job, I was more planning on trying to build it myself. But the more I went deep into it, the more I had the real conversations. I realized the problem was not that you can build a tracking and a tech software for nurses and the problem of home healthcare is solved. It's a much more deep rooted problem, for which first I don't think I was equipped. Second thing, I don't even think I was very interested in making that the next 10, 15 years of my life, right? Like training nurses or something like that. And that's where it was good that I had EF because in those 3 months,
Got it.
while I did not raise from EF, while I actually did not find a co-founder in EF, and that's why I left midway. It was the first time in my life that I had decided that I want to start up. Then I was reaching out actively to other people, people who I knew from my alums, mutual friends, and all of that. And working with Prateek happened sort of coincidentally in that Bolna was one of the multiple ideas.
Yeah, completely.
Cool. So I was saying it was good to have EF then because although I did not find a co-founder, I did leave midway, but working with Prateek started off there. And in that process, explored a lot of different startup ideas. Bolna was just one of them. We were exploring Second Brain, we were exploring creator economy. With Prateek, I think voice AI was something that we thought was quite interesting. Right? Like at that point of
Sorry, how did you
time,
meet Prateek, by the way?
so Prateek is a college senior of mine. We have some mutual friends and all, and that's sort of how we got together. In while figuring out what to build, the idea was very very basic at the start. It was just that there is no place on the internet where I can build a voice agent that carries out telephony calls for me. There was one called Air.call, in US. It was very small website at that point of time, but nothing existed in India. So let's build something like that. That's where we started. That's where we started building something. And now coming more to the fundraise point of view, we I've been a part of like three fundraisers, I would say, until now. One was completely failed. One was, I would say, like a moderate success, and one was super successful. The first one was like moderately successful. So we reached out. The first
Sorry,
time we put out
this
our.
this is when you finalized Bolna as a voice AI agent. This was
This
more a
is when we
horizontal
decided we are
platform.
gonna build. At that time, it was an open source horizontal voice AI platform, similar to what like Livescape is today. That was the original idea, and this was Feb 2024 when we decided to jump into this. So Feb 24, we put out a demo of how easy it is to build a bot that orders a pizza for you in Hindi,
Yeah, yeah,
and we put it out, and it was like the first time someone in India had put out something like that, so we got a lot
okay,
of inbound. And of
yeah,
course, this was the first time you have
inbounds.
partners and principals from VCs reaching out saying this is amazing and they think you're definitely going to make it big and they want to invest. And in that interest, we of course were not thinking of fundraising until then. But that was when we were like, okay, now let's fundraise. I think it's in the bag, right? Like we have so many people reaching out. This means we'll definitely raise. And that was not true. Of course, we went and had a lot of conversations with a lot of VCs. All the larger VCs. Some of my friends and some other founders told me that you should maybe talk to smaller VCs first and all. But we were like, we are
We're just
definitely
going all in.
raising from the top five or top six, so we're only going to talk to them.
Yeah.
Um, and they didn't work out. A lot of it was, maybe wait for longer or too early or whatever with the sort of things we got there. Why we applied to YC, got an interview, did not go through because they didn't think Indian businesses would pay for voice AI the way we were charging them at that point of time. And in that process, while applying for YC, one of my managers at in Probo, who was building like Orca Blue, he had gone into Upeka, which is like another Indian focal accelerator, which is like a pre-seed fund. So we applied for Upeka. We loved talking to the MDs, and we got Upeka funding. So that's why I call it a moderate success, because we were of course trying for like a 2-3 million check right out of the go, but we still got 125K, and it was
And
a great.
what was the rationale to say we'll do a $2-3 million check? I mean, you got a lot of inbound. You said usual seed rounds are 2 to 3
It was
million
it was
dollars. So
literally inbound. It was I mean, like
yeah,
I would say not 2-3, maybe like 800K to 1 million. But we're building deep tech. We're building like a horizontal infra that's going to scale globally. This
yeah,
this has to have a big raise.
yeah.
There was no math. There was no logic. It was just what we were hearing from people, and what we were thinking we should get. But getting into Upeka was sort of like it was a good cohort. It was a good journey for us to start building. You have some money, so you can start at least doing some experiments. Otherwise, you're very cagey upon. Like, do you buy subscriptions? Do you hire
Yeah,
an
yeah.
intern? Do you get a designer for the basic thing, or do you do it yourself? So at least we had that level of leverage. So that we pivoted quite a bit. There were a couple of small pivots, but one point, and I think we talked at that point sort of as well, is we were focusing only on voice AI for recruitment. But again, like very market very what people are saying on LinkedIn driven. Vertical SaaS, vertical AI is a big thing, and everyone should be building in vertical AI. And we thought, recruitment is broken. AI in the ways work perfectly there. So let's
Any
do that.
reason? Any reason to go after just recruitment as a vertical? Like, is there a see? You're seeing a huge traction there from your existing clients or something like that?
Well, yeah. So that was one. Was our first $12,000 service contract, not like a recurring contract, was for recruitment, and we worked closely with him in US, and we saw it work. So we were like, this definitely works. Secondly, meanwhile, we did pursue voice AI for CRMs, voice AI for BFSI all as well, but recruitment was where we thought we had more pull, and the calls success rate was much higher because people want to do recruitment calls versus like a BFSI call. So those were like the first principle thinkings through which we landed on recruitment. And at that point of time, our numbers were going. Yeah, sorry.
So again, context, Neil, Abhilash, I think we started chatting again, healthcare, we were not doing capital at that point, but horizontal again, all the VCs are still figuring out how will horizontal work in India. Then he came to vertical. Hiring in vertical was super interesting, but we're still not seeing a lot of traction in AI-led interviews at that point, so we couldn't take that jump. So we had a lot of in-office sessions with Maitreya going back and forth. And I'm just curious, when did you go from that hiring to the CX bit that you have right now, and then how did fundraise pan out from there?
Well, we went from hiring to horizontal again. Like right now, what we are is a purely horizontal voice AI orchestration focused on Indian languages. The only slight tweak from what we were doing earlier is now we are very heavily forward deployed as well. So what we were not like, we are self-serve, but our focus is creating the sort of onboarding that within 1 or 2 weeks or at max a month, you have complete power to use Bolna's platform in a way that you can automate all of your calls from customer support to recruitment to lead qualification to sales to customer journey calls, everything like that. We sort of give you the skills as well as our platform knowledge so that you can very easily start automating. And if you want to, let's say, switch languages, switch regions, it's just a click for you. So this whole jump sort of happened extremely organic. And that was sort of where our failed fundraise, or what I would call it, would be, is because we did talk to a lot of VCs there, and this was more of a fundraise which we needed. The first was something which we got drawn into. This was more that numbers are going down. We have like 8 months of runway left. We need to figure out what we need to do. And I think one very big lesson I can give is if you are if you're grasping for VCs, that's the worst time to talk
To raise.
to VCs
Right.
because I think
And
it
also,
was
how
yeah.
did you go about that time? Because you already had inbound interest. I'm sure you spoke to a lot of people who then said, let's engage later on. Some people would have said that. Some people, how did you go about re-engaging? Did you just reach out and say we have did something different and let's start chatting with the same guys, or did you figure out some
So
new
so
guys?
we
And
so our LinkedIn from the start has been strong, right? We've been built in public from day one. So we've been putting things out on LinkedIn, putting numbers out, and we kept getting interest. A lot of interest too. Earlier we said pushing forward. We would then mail them and say that, hey, you know what? Now we're ready. Let's get on a call. So that's sort of how the VC conversation started there. Again, I think this is where we had more than 6, 7, maybe 20, 25, maybe even 30 conversations with different VCs. A lot of which got stuck either on not having US traction because we were like a global recruitment focused VC. But what was happening was even the recruitment firms who were using us or the final players who were using us, the biggest value add we were creating that was not in the market was the quality of voice AI calling. It wasn't the proctoring tools or the CV assessment tools and all that was there because they were like, we have that as well. But there was no other place where they could get like 500 millisecond realistic multilingual calls that Bolna was giving them. So we were also, I think, from the deepest part of our hearts, we were understanding that this is what is working and not the recruiter as such. But we were sort of all in. And I think VC conversations also sort of did pause even in situations when they realized that what we are building and what people are wanting the most is not exactly the same. So in process of that, and I think another thing there was if wherever you read on LinkedIn, you'll just read that horizontal doesn't work, build vertical, right?
yeah,
And based on
that
that,
was a
we were like,
huge
okay,
anti-PR wave for what you're building at that point, right? Like people are
I
saying
swear,
exactly
and
that.
now
Yeah,
everyone's jumping onto it, which is
crazy.
ironic.
I mean,
And that
just to point out something here, there was a company that we spoke to in pipeline quite early on, and we had started building excitement for AI in language learning. It was a huge wave of companies that's coming out at that point. So I had reached out to this company which was building AI language learning. By the time I reached out and had a chat, they had pivoted from that because everybody has told them that doesn't work, and they were doing something else. And the wave had come back down. They're figuring out should we go back or not. So the PR wave keeps going
oh
up
yeah,
and
it's
against you,
crazy.
and
No, I think some people were like really, there were a few people who were really confident in what we were doing more than Pratik and I were. So we pivoted, but like Rajan and Prasanna from Upeka were actually very objectively telling us to stay horizontal. But we were just pretty sure we can't raise because we go to someone, they're like, hey, this is crowded, we can't even talk to you. At least in recruitment, we were getting that call. And I know it now or sort of sounds like a story is being spun up, but what really happened is we stopped the fundraise and we decided that we are not going the VC route. I spoke to some people who were building great AI services, and we sort of were sure that we are going to build a great voice AI service. That is, we go to people and help them deploy voice AI, our voice AI on their platform. No VC, no product, no moat, nothing. Um, and that's what we did for 2 months. And our revenues went from like $1,000 a month to like $20,000 a month. And that's when YC happened, right? So in this
by the
process,
time
we
you're
apply.
you're profitable, I guess. I mean.
We were
Sincere to that.
profitable because we weren't burning anything, right? Like we were super lean. We were focusing on building services. So you have to be profitable. We focused on cutting costs, increasing margins, and all of that. And we applied to YC completely on a whim. We were just like, hey, why not apply, right? There was almost, I mean, we didn't, for every failed YC application, I would travel to Delhi or Pratik would travel here and together we would do the video to show that we are together. In this YC, we were on ourselves. I haven't even seen the product video of YC. We just applied on a whim. And the YC interview with Tom was literally everything in your YC application is good, but I just can't believe that you're getting $20,000 from big Indian enterprises with this product with zero marketing spend. And after the YC interview, we were like, okay, this is not working. This doesn't believe us. He sent us a mail that send your bank statements for the last 6 months and tell us who is paying you what. And we actually did that. And then 3 hours later, we got the acceptance into YC.
But what
So
changed? Was it the traction that you're proving the product is really working with the customers? Is that the key thing that changed from all of your previous YC application?
it was just building for our customers rather than building for what LinkedIn says customers want. Right? Like because you are so deep into conversations and having talks with some of the core customers who like your product. When we started listening to them and building for them versus having a vision that no, we are an AI recruiter and because of that we will do XYZ, we sort of realized what do customers really demand from us and how do we productize that in a way that the next 10 customers can get it without us having to put any effort into it.
Got it.
And I think that was the biggest thing over there that really worked for traction and for profitability. And because the product was good, the product is still good. Like even now, there's almost no place where in 10 minutes you can purchase your own phone number, you have your own agent, and you can do a batch call of 10,000 people and get detailed dashboarded results of what has happened in those calls. We were just not showing that we were doing that. We were saying that hey, we're also building an AI recruiter, which no one really wanted. So that's sort of what changed. We started listening to real feedback and acting on that versus listening that feedback we were getting directly. And
So
then
YC round happened, and then
yeah,
did you go on again on a fundraise mode because you had YC again?
no, we
Or
didn't. We didn't
okay,
at all. So when YC happened, we were thinking that this 500K is great. We're a profitable company. Do we even need a demo day fundraise? Let's figure out how it went, how it goes. So our focus, and I think this is again some great lessons in hindsight is we just kept focusing that we were scarred from the second fundraise so much that we were sure we're not going to raise again. Like, oh my god, YC happened somehow. Now let's build a brand and let's keep getting customers. So we didn't even think even once that there's going to be another fundraise. We would not even. I mean, we would not even dream of talking to the top 6 VCs again because we're like it's not worked once.
wouldn't you having pressure from Upeka and others saying when are you raising next?
No, Upeka is
Just
great
kidding.
actually in that way. Upeka is very, very forward with founders being focused on building sustainable businesses versus just blindly raising. And that's one of the reasons we were sure to go with Upeka even in the early days because it really matched our vibe then as well.
Yeah, awesome.
Um, yeah, and then in YC we did the same thing. We ignored every VC and we just built great products and kept talking about it on LinkedIn. And it worked. Our revenues were increasing, but more important than that, there was a certain brand being built that hey, here is this one company which is building AI for Indian enterprises, which has never really worked. They're already doing this. Like their LinkedIn posts are like some of YC's most highest traction LinkedIn posts. Their company is being spoken really well amongst other YC founders as well. And we got VC interest. We said no to all VC interest until we got a mail from someone saying, hey, I know that you're going to raise huge and you may not have time to talk to us. So we want to give you $150,000 as an MFN. And at that
Sorry,
moment,
what
we
is
were
the
like,
MF?
wow.
What is
So
the
an MFN
MF?
is like a most favorable nation. It's like there's no cap. It
Okay,
basically means whatever cap you set, just add the 150K over there. There's no post valuation, pre valuation cap.
okay.
Um, so it's just money that you're getting into the bank, and then whenever you choose a cap, it gets placed with that. And we couldn't believe what we were hearing because it's like 150K is more than we had raised until then. And accepting that, we just sort of realized that okay, this is something that's working. So our this fundraise was, I think, super successful. We had our first VC. We raised around $250,000 completely from inbound people giving us money. People were like, "Hey, we want to get on a call with you." We were like, "We are not taking calls before 17th November." And when we said that to enough people, 4 or 5 of them actually just gave us money. They were like, just take these checks because if you're not taking calls, it probably means that you will definitely, when you take calls, you'll raise very quickly. And we want
Okay.
to be part of the cap table. So we want to get in early. That gives a lot of confidence, actually. 17th November, we had our first call. And 20th November is when we closed the 6.3 million fundraise. So
But how did that?
4 days.
How did that round come together? Like, how did 6.3 get decided? Was it because of the VC interest and you said we'll have this guys and put up a round of this much?
So our
Or
plan was to raise 3 at 30. That was the original
okay,
plan.
okay.
But before we started, we had already done with around 600. So then we moved that to 4 at 40. So the plan was to raise 4 at 40. And after that, I mean, valuation, we weren't really sure. It was just a number we would give some VCs. Otherwise, it was 3. The 4 was the cap that we wanted to raise. And we kept raising, like every call ended. We had 12 calls every day for
What
4
are the
days.
total time it took to raise from the time you started raising that 6.2? How many weeks did it get to get the total term sheets in and then
4
the
days.
money? Okay,
4 days. 4 days
okay,
for the
that's
term
quite quick.
sheets. Money took, like, of course, a couple of weeks. Like
Yeah,
GC Bloom took some time, but it
yeah.
took 4 days to get all the term sheets. And we did 12 calls every day. Day one, we spoke to every YC focused VC. Day two, we spoke to every large Indian VC, including GC Bloom and all the other larger ones. Day three, we had second calls with the Indian focused VCs, and we spoke to the best angels of YC. And day four, we just wrapped it up.
What
So
just worked this time? Just having the more customer revenue, customer feedback that is really
yeah,
working, churn,
so
all of those things.
so the revenue numbers were great. We'd gone from 1,000 to $35,000 of monthly revenue in 4 months. Every customer that we were working with, none of them had churned. A lot of our customers had tried similar products and chosen us for very clear reasons. And when I say similar products, I include American similar products like Vapi. I include for foundational models like in 11 Labs or Sarvam. And there were clear reasons why people were switching. And that really worked in front of VCs, of course. We had some great angels, like Aarti and like Taro and all, who I like really looked up to in the YC ecosystem, who really like gave confidence in us. And then GC did, of course, a proper due diligence. I was working very closely with their analyst like throughout the night, talking to all of our customers, going through a lot of the data. And we were at 2.8 million then, when we sort of decided that okay, we either take like a big check, or we just take another 500 600k of smaller checks, and we close this out at 3.5. And then GC came in with 3.5, and that sort of led to the 6.3 number getting reached. And then we just said no to everyone else. We did have more interest as well, but we didn't want to dilute it more. So that was
Awesome. No,
the
there are a
situation.
lot of points I would love to deep down, but this is super helpful, Maitreya. And maybe I'll just quickly move on to Neil. Neil had a very different story. He started as a solo founder, chose a very unsexy field of P2P industrial solutions providing. So Neil, just walk us through a little bit about, and also you started with, what, 1.5 years of experience, 2 years of experience at that go. So can you tell us a little bit about, there's a lot of hyped field, as Maitreya said, a lot of LinkedIn things going on, what is interesting for VCs and others. Just curious on, where you started, how was your first raise and then the major raise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for Magma, we were operating in an industry which was highly fragmented and, like you mentioned, not so sexy, right? And as a company, we were building industrial solutions and doing things which typically doesn't sit well with a 21 22 year old founder. At that time I was 22 and 25 right now, so it's been about 3 4 years. And uh, I think it in the early days it became a very very difficult to digest for people that okay, here's this guy talking about helping factories get better uh, uh, while being at this age, because somewhere down the line this is the real world sort of solutions that you're working on, right? And I think my journey was pretty interesting because at that time uh, it wasn't really about the business model. It wasn't really about the kind of work we were doing, but it was more about okay, here's this guy who has a insane energy and obsession about building something in this space, so let's just give him a shot and see where this goes, right? So it was about December 21, when I quit my job in the US and moved back to India. I was doing my bachelor's in economics in California. Uh, I was working part-time at this company in procurement and supply chain. So I kind of came from the industry, but like you mentioned, the industry experience was about a year and a half. So to be able to take that call, come back to India, be unemployed for a good 2 quarters while figuring out the actual problem, I think it was a very um, naive risk, and I wouldn't recommend anyone to take that. But that being said, I knew from day one I wanted to start a company. I was just looking for my uh,
Just like everyone in Ahmedabad, more or less.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's either go big or go home, right? But sort of in essence, I was so young that I had nothing to lose. 21 years of age. What's the worst that could happen? Like I could in few years go back to doing a job, right? But the early realization was that when you look at LinkedIn, when you look at like online reports, a lot was being talked about manufacturing. So we knew that we were in the right space, but very little was being talked about what's actually happening on ground, and the kind of problems that factories faced, the real Make in India story, whether Make in India is actually just a tagline or something that is going to be around for a longer period of time. That's where our thesis kept on getting validated the moment we spent time with our customers and started communicating it to our VCs. They with the energy we had and the kind of nuances we were bringing on the table, they were enough to bet on the fact that okay, let's give them a shot and see where this goes. It's funny, like in August 22 we raised our first institutional round. It was a small round, pre-seed round of $500,000. What the business was at that time versus what it is now is completely different, right? So we started out as a sourcing company where we would like help factories source and kind of build a cross border marketplace. But building along those lines made us realize that okay, there's actually a lot of problems on the supply side. And similar to what Maitra mentioned, right, we had a different pain point that actually had a use case, but we were building so horizontally that it kind of became distracting, right? Uh, but luckily we had like investors who kept us accountable, and we stood to our
Before
ground.
we go then, how was it first 500 I mean, you started off saying that I want to help you source to factories, which you can do as a small member team and help them and figure out things on the way. And did you parallelly just start the fundraising process, saying that here is a good idea, we're doing some progress and having some clients, and let me also try to figure out fundraise from the get go?
So it was even before that. I started fundraising before even the idea was fully validated. Like it
Okay,
was December 21 I
so
landed.
you're using VCs also to validate on the go.
Yeah. Like 14th Feb Valentine's Day, I registered the company, and from 15th, I was out and about fundraising. Right. What my pitch to VCs was that like we're not fully validated on the business model yet, but we're validated on the opportunity, and we need this capital to be able to build on this nuance. And here are 10 different nuances we have on the table at the moment, and if even one of these clicks, we're talking about a big opportunity. And showing credible evidence against that. In a business like ours, the numbers tend to get quite big, right? Where because the ticket sizes, average order values are quite high, so we were able to demonstrate a proof of concept along all of those lines, and that kind of got a lot of them excited that okay, if there's a pre-seed pool of capital, these guys can actually build a bridge out. And I think our approach and our unfair advantage was we were away from a lot of noise. Sort of, we were building from Ahmedabad, right? So it's a very traditional Dandha driven place where people talk about unit economics from day one, working capital from day one. And when you're building in manufacturing supply chain, these are things that happen on a routine basis, right? They don't change overnight. So if you're able to build a nuance where people are actually ready to work with you, that's when you can really validate your product market fit. And I think that's what happened for us in the early days. The proof of concept started delivering, and I mean that was also a different time. 2021 was somewhat, I would say, uh, the bull market phase or the end of the bull market phase, and a lot of B2B startups were getting funded at that time. Like every month, I know there was a unicorn coming in this space, and because of government policy shifting and macro manufacturing push, it just became such a real opportunity that every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the startup ecosystem wanted to take a bite, or a lot of people missed out on it. So, like, that was the overall, like, qualitative part of my journey. From a VC lens, my first check, like I mentioned, came from this micro VC fund in Bombay. And even in their IC, it was like, when we walked in, they were very kind enough to say that, look, the business is uh, like, there's what to pitch, right? Like, there's just some ideas, but we believe in this founder and we like his energy, and we're gonna back him. And I think the moment the capital got wired to us, uh, I think, being very traditional in our approach, that kind of changed the accountability scenario for us, right? Like, we actually kept our feet on the ground, rolled up their sleeves, and yeah, one thing led to another. We ended up raising a new round after 3 months, and then kept on raising. And it's less to do about raising, but it's also more to do about the fact that, um, what we told our VCs and promised is that we don't want to be if we don't execute fast enough, we will be a very good small company in a very big market. And and I think that kind of helped them also look at how we were performing, and just the growth potential and everything around that. And I know I've been like going on like a lot of same topics again, but uh, I think, long story short, manufacturing, supply chain, these are like, problems where you also don't see young founders
Yeah,
come in.
exactly. Just coming to that bit, right? When you are reaching out to VCs, I'm just curious, did you even think about all these accelerators, angels, or did you just start out to all the Taiwan VCs directly because you raised from some big guy, small round in the initial stage as well? Number one. And number two, when they were coming from an angle of this was a time when AI was booming, right? Like they're looking for AI companies. We are an AI firm looking for an AI company as well. Again, our story was very similar. We met you and wanted to back the founders. Just curious on that front, like, how are you navigating and saying, hey, this is the story, and then, although you're looking for AI companies, there's a very interesting story putting it out there. And second, between angels, accelerators, VCs, given the traction is much less traction, huge, little more capex heavy kind of business, and you are going and racing on day one. So just curious how the dynamic played out. What were people telling you? Who was excited and why?
Yeah, I think one thing is that there was a very clear thesis that asset heavy businesses in this space have a very fixed IRR, right? But the tech boom was coming in, and you were able to see traditional industries get digitized, get their operations more agile. The fragmentation was put on a platform versus being on pen and paper. And I think when the ticket sizes are so big, and the overall supply chain is constructed in a way which is mainly manual, um, with with not just AI, just tech in general, kind of empowers this to a different lens. And I think it was also sort of an industry phenomenon at that time. At that time, you were seeing a lot of B2B companies position themselves as B2B e-commerce marketplaces. And nobody had seen those kind of revenue
Businesses.
numbers, or
Yeah.
right? Like, for a software company to do $10 million revenue every month, nobody would see it, right? I think the space is matured, that people are able to read between the lines right now and understand that, okay, like, this is uh, not actually tech. This is tech is an enabler in the story. And I think we wanted to be true to our approach in stating that tech will always be an enabler in our story, rather than be the key moat. It will make things easy, it will not make things, in simple terms. And I think at that time the story was different, and sure, that got the ecosystem benefit. And one thing we mentioned in our B2B space all the time is that if one of us wins, everyone wins, right? Because the uh, uh, like the business models are fundamentally very traditional and very much the same. So
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense, Neil. Again, thanks a lot for taking us through that. And we'll come back to some points there. But before that, Abhilash, jumping on to you, you have again co-founded two startups. I would like to know about two of them. Was Elinac venture funded before it acquired by Shecha?
Of course, just for context, right? My previous company at Atlantic, we had it was started off by me and a close friend of mine. We were quite immature. We had an idea one night. We got into started making the website and app that evening.
This is
But
while you were in college, or
no, why we were both working in ITC at that time, right? So yeah, we pretty much that evening we are like, okay, let's build a website. Let's figure out what to do here. However, over there as well, while we were very immature, we were fortunate enough to the very first round, well, it was a small, I think 300K, the 500K kind of round. It happened within like 2 months with just the two of us. It just, which was quite, I would say it was quite fortunate because we coincidentally were building in a space where there were some very large success stories in Japan. So our couple of investors were Japanese who were where it was pretty much like a lookalike product. And funnily enough, it was a product when we were building that we weren't even aware of. The investors, kind of told us that, and these investors are people who are in my current company as well. So it's been like a eight-year plus relationship there.
Got it. Got it. And you raised a 300 to 500K round for Alien Act in the very early days because of
Plus 500, I think about 800K in the first 2 months that we raised.
okay.
Which was very quick. Of course, after that, it was only challenges, which came up with e-commerce. And at that time, our ticket size was 300 to 500 rupees. So it was a struggle. I don't think in that company we ever saw runway more than like 9 to 12 months, because generally e-commerce just ends up having so much
Playbook.
burn when the ticket size is so low.
Yeah. Abhilash, let me frame this conversation. Like, if you could talk me through when you decided to start up again, Ivy Homes, given your learnings of how to raise and how to think about businesses in Jelinek, how did you think about that raise? And I mean, since you've been chatting, I know how you engage with some of the investors quite early on when you're ideating, etc. But you could just walk me through why you were thinking about the idea, where you're engaging, when did you start thinking about the raise, and what are the learnings from Eleanor that you followed on? That'll be super helpful.
Absolutely right. So, and second time around was generally a lot more deliberate in my approach as well, right? So I think I took about 5 to 6 months just to figure out what to build. Uh, and it was just, going deeper, meeting people, figuring out different sectors. After I had narrowed down on, building something like IB Homes, which is in the prop tech side where we make, where we have some kind of a full stack approach in property transactions. At that point in time, because I was fortunate enough to have that previous, experience, had some kind of an exit, was at least getting connected and having conversation with investors was a little easier. But of course, in my learnings there, I also realized that it is super important to be extremely deliberate when fundraising, right? In terms of who are we meeting, why we are meeting them, and what our expectation is. Because at the end of the day, just having conversations without a takeaway is not necessarily a win for the entrepreneur. And being an investor, you understand that as investors, people always want to engage. It may not necessarily be
So,
win here.
yeah.
And with some of the past experience also, at that time, my thought process was that there was a lot that I was also looking up to YC and YC startups. So on a whim, we had decided, hey, let's just apply to YC. In fact, our application, I don't think had anything except except that one video and that we intend to build this. But at least a couple of things on storytelling had picked up after having pitched and failed to so many investors in my previous venture. We got accepted, and the biggest takeaway in that whole YC program is the way they helped startups close their first round, right? I think that is something over years they have hacked through to make it as optimal as possible. From the point of view that, when to engage, how to engage, including the instruments they've created with their safe instruments, etc. Just so that as the entrepreneur, you are able to get the best possible terms or the best possible chance of raising. That is something which generally works well, right? So there are a couple of things that they, in YC, they will always tell founders that, hey, you know what? As soon as you get in, don't talk to any investor. No, you will
As
always,
soon as you get in, don't talk to any investors. Okay. You talk only on the demo day.
or just before the demo day as they
Okay.
bring it out. And it's great advice, right? Because
Okay.
when you're talking without having any concrete pitch, it's like there's less reason for that person to want to talk to you again. So that is one. The second is that when you're speaking, make sure you speak to everyone in a very condensed time frame. And they design that program explicitly for that, right? So as I think Maitreya mentioned, 4 days,
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be like a week at the most, like a
Yeah.
maximum a week before demo day.
Hmm.
Just because they then create some urgency with investors to be the first, otherwise they might get cut out. And thirdly, it's at the end of the day, because at a seed stage, right? It's all about at a seed, Series A, even Series B. It's a lot about narrative only in terms of what is the opportunity, why is this one of the better teams to do it. I think the focus is always on how to ensure you get that narrative out. Like, Maitreya mentioned some revenue numbers, etc. Those are all just supporting, but at the end of the day, it's just the narrative which matters,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
including.
think one thing I can just add on exactly on this point. So some investors ask for extensive data rooms, right? They need a lot of data. You have to send MIS and all of that. So YC sort of just told us don't make data rooms. They were like, no one in YC should make a data room because if no one has it, then investors can't. I mean, it's not like you're saying fake data because you're a part of YC. There's a large level of qualification that's done. Data rooms just means you're spending days and days calculating a lot of things specifically for investors. And at a seed stage, they should be ready to take that bet without it. And when investors would come to us and say that, hey, where's your data room? We were just like, we don't have a data room. Right? And the reason it worked is because no one else did. Because if everyone else did and you didn't, then you're not going to
It's a
land that
problem.
pitch because they're going to be like, this company is not prepared. So
But
when every
To Abhilash's point as well, it's also more about I believe in your narrative so much, and you're moving so fast that I just have to invest and I'll just figure out how to do this internally rather
Yeah,
than fight with you for a data room.
no,
I
no,
actually
yeah,
have
you're
a
right.
100%,
But to be fair, though, good investors will do diligence after. It's not that
of
it's a
course, yeah,
like it's
like
so
Saurav
you're
can.
right. It's just that you have pushed that data room to a little later, right?
yeah,
It's not that you should fake things or get away with things, because in fact that is going to affect you forever. Because
yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
you are cut out at the time of diligence, then nobody will touch
Yeah, and that's better because after you've said something, if you're saying I don't have a data room, but sure, you ask my data, you go through my numbers, we'll be happy to give it to you once you're ready. There's that confidence that's already there, and there's a overall belief that you're not supposed to fake it. Actually, one very interesting thing that YC did is they literally told us that see, investors take us for granted. Like if we are saying that this company is real, right, and you were saying all of you are real, you are going with the YC tag and because of that, like for example, we did not have contracted ARR. We went on monthly revenue. We were very specifically told that you should not have the word ARR written anywhere in your pitch deck. Right. So this level of diligence is done by YC for
Why does
all
that
of the
help?
companies.
Why does that help to not write ARR? I didn't get that bit.
Because we don't have ARR. We don't have recurring revenue. We have monthly revenue. So we got
In India,
monthly revenue of 30.
people write just recurring revenue anyways.
Exactly right. And that's sort of why, because there is this lack of trust, is why you need data rooms, why you need extensive
Got
proofs
it.
that you
Got
are
it.
saying what you're saying. But over here, I remember just in a mock pitch, I mentioned an ARR number. And they're like, okay, can you send me this? And just out of as like a joke, the partner was like, okay, send me these 3 contracts, please. And like, no, they're not contracts, it's monthly into 12. Then they're like, you cannot mention ARR. Like, if you mention ARR and someone asks you for a contract and you don't have it, that's the end of your company's good
Got it.
uh, fundraise journey, right? So they're very specific on you have to be true to what you are saying. If even if it's monthly revenue and MRR, these are two different things. Because MRR means the next month you will get that. Monthly revenue means you don't know what you're
Makes
gonna
sense.
get.
Makes sense. Sorry, Neil, you had a point, and then I'll go back to Abhilash.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think my opinion and is I think it's because of a different industry altogether, but it's altogether different because I think for all our fundraisers, what got us over the line was because we had a very extensive data room, right? And of course, like Abhilash and Maitra mentioned, it's very state specific and it's very like sector specific. And in the software world where there's like a hockey stick growth and everything pretty much trackable, in our space it's really about the discipline of numbers, right? So I think Saurav can attest. The point I was trying to make is when Capria was diligencing us, I think we had uh, like not just data rooms, but we had like a qualitative diligence and a quantitative diligence along with the financial and tax diligence, right? On forget about MRR, forget about ARR, but what is actually the quality of your revenue and how it is translating in actually on your MCA website or like the government portals, right?
But nowadays, to be fair, most investors do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Abhilash,
All investors.
To both Maiteryas and your fund, it's also about investor appetite. If you're pitching to Valley VCs who are tier one, have a lot of money and have to deploy that, they'll buy you if it's a hot space without data room. But if you're speaking to a GP who has raised, $50 $100 million first fund, second fund, he has to have his gut full of, conviction with data and all, right? But going back to Abhilash, your point, you said condensed time in urgency. That's when you started out without data room. And then what after that?
So the point is that that's what it was, right? So for us, it was only on the narrative, and at least my journey with the first fundraise was that we had a lot of inbound interest. We started maybe like a week before demo day. Had a lot of inbound interest. We initially, I think at that time, had planned to raise 4 million, which in 21, which was the buy batch we were in part of, and we had not launched then. We only launched in 22. So it was just still like me and my co-founder just on narrative. So at that time, we were looking to raise 4 million because we had some working capital requirements. But we had a lot of investor interest. And finally, I think it was the day before demo day when Khosla Ventures came and said that we'll just take up, we're going to take it over 6 million, I think 6.5 million, but you don't do demo day.
Got it. So Abhilash, and after that demo day didn't happen, how did you go about raising from that larger round? Did you start engaging with VCs early on? Were you ideating on what?
That round was 6.5 million for us. And after that, so I mean, later on rounds have their own stories. But in terms of the first round,
I think when we
it was
spoke, I remember you were chatting.
before.
Yeah, but I think when we spoke, I remember you were chatting with Khosla on, I think, Open Door on how it was a success in the US before you were ideating, right? Like, I'm sure that helped build the trust early on in terms of the replicability of that playbook in India. Would that be a case? This is before you got to YC or after YC?
No, so Khosla Ventures happened after YC.
Okay. And that is
Khosla
because you're just ideating on how that US playbook could go out in India and they just believed and said, let's come back and do this.
Yes.
Good.
Yes. So to
So
be
let's go.
fair, because they had a large position on Open Door and they had seen it do well, for them, this is just an optionality, that hey, if it works in India, it can grow big. So let's see.
So, like from all the conversation, I just want to throw out this broad point and get your opinions on this. So, Maitreya said something interesting. He said, "Don't raise when you were direct needing for money. Raise when things are going so well. Although you did it once and it didn't work, and you have to take some learnings from that, Maitreya. And you also talked about having a condensed time frame and going after it. I'm just curious. Let's say I'm a founder. I've built an MVP. It's doing reasonably well. I'm having good traction. I see a lot of people, associates, partner, reach out here. There. How do I know this is a time to ask them to wait? Or do I just engage with them and tell them that hey, we are not raising right now? We will be raising in 6 months, and that you know when do I know to build that condensed window to go all out fundraising? Right? Like,
So
how do I know this is the time to say tell everyone that I'm raising, and I have a week to close? Or how, do I not engage and just tell them that dude, just wait, I'll let you know. Like, what is your guide takes? I'm just curious.
I think one clarification here is I wouldn't say don't raise when you need to raise funds. I think definitely if you can, you should. But
Yeah,
I was saying
ideally not aim for it.
the worst time to raise is when you are desperate to raise. Like that's the least leverage you will ever have. And this word leverage is used a lot in VC conversations as well. And whenever you talk to whenever like this question comes a lot, right? Should we entertain this investor? This investor is asking to speak to 10 customers. This investor is asking for a board seat, whatever. Should we encourage it or not? The first question a part would ask is how much leverage do you have? Do you have 20 other investors knocking at your door, or are you knocking at
Not
20
yeah,
investors' doors?
yeah.
If you are knocking, then yes, give the board seat, make the data room, do whatever you have. But yeah, I think just wanted to make that clarification, of course.
No,
I think
that
Abhilash
that
was had
yeah.
a
No, that makes sense. But yeah,
yeah, sorry. So I mean, it also depends on the stage, Saurabh. If you're talking only about the first check, because it's a lot on narrative, it's like this, right? It depends on. So why you have to go back to why even capital is raised, right? It's usually to expand team, build product. In some cases, to grow the product already built in. I think it's about as a founder, you have to figure out when is it that you need the money and raise a little before that. Right. So in terms of speaking to investors, etc., as well, I would say it's completely about that, right? where hey, you as a
So
founder are super
let me
confident that this is the product I want to build, and
let me
this
give you
is
more context. Let me outline more context so that we can have a more focused discussion. Let's say I build a very targeted vertical SaaS, and I have initial pilots going on. They want to convert, and I should probably start hiring engineers and a team and all to start serving a lot of those clients. Interesting feedbacks from the pilots coming along. Customers are interesting. Now, this is a hot space, or probably the medium hot space that is just interest. And I see all the Taiwan funds are more or less in my DM, or has at least I got a mail from some of these guys over a period of 1 or 2 months, right? Now, these mails are sitting in boxes in LinkedIn and sitting. I just don't know if I tell them, ki, okay, let's just chat, but we're not raising. Okay, I'm happy to chat and build a relationship. Maybe we'll raise 6 months down the line. Or is this the time where I just go in and say that, we're really hot, although we're doing just pilot, we want to raise in the next 1 week? Like, what are your guys' suggestions on how to figure it out in terms of what is that condensed window? When do I place? And also, how do I build that urgency, right? Like, maybe it take, how do I, without telling that, I'm speaking to this guy and he's on this date versus how do I build that urgency? Just
so
curious.
I mean, I have a couple of thoughts here, right? One is when you say this is the pilot, I'm getting some traction. I think as a founder and founder and or an early team that exists, you should be super convinced that hey, you know what, this is what I'm going to be building for the next couple of years at least, right? So I think that is first level, that as a founder you should be super convinced. Uh, Number two is that if you are super convinced and you're convinced that there is a business to be built, I think that's the right time to go and talk to any seed stage investor. In terms of how to do it, right? My personal opinion is just chatting without objective is usually not a good thing, right? So if there is an investor, because an investor reached out, I just want to say hi and build relationship, right? What that I don't think at a seed stage is necessarily a good thing at all, because whether we know it or not, the person on the other side of the table will already be making opinions of us, and we should just be prepared for that to happen. So it's my advice to every entrepreneur is just to be extremely deliberate when it comes to fundraise. So it's very easy to
But
say
would
no.
you recommend? Would you
Right.
recommend? Like, for example, I'm not really sure if this is what I want to build for the next. I'm just piloting, right? I just don't know that yet. But you recommend that I go and build a relationship and use that conversation to learn something from them and their portfolio as well.
No,
I
I
would
would
not.
I
I
wouldn't do
think
it.
I
If
think
I had to
VCs are
do it, I would
super
ask
helpful.
directly for a connect to the portfolio. I'm so sorry. If I had to do it, I would ask directly to connect to the portfolio or somebody else rather than chatting with the investor.
Yeah, I was actually saying the same thing. Like, I think VCs are super helpful in only two ways. One is connecting to portfolios, and that conversation should have nothing to do with raising. It shouldn't be, hey, I'm looking to raise, but while you make your decision, can you please connect me to your four portcos? Because then both of the things aren't going to happen, right? Best that you send a mail saying, hey, I want to connect with this portco, please help me out there. Or secondly, hey, I want to raise and I'm trying to close in the next 2 weeks. I think I've also made that mistake where you're, making a conversation about raising, but also talking about connects to your portfolios, also talking about connects to other VCs.
Yeah.
That's probably not
But
mixing all
yeah.
of these things. Probably is not the smartest idea.
Neil, what's your point of view on this?
I think, for me, what really worked out was actually tapping into entrepreneurs who are a couple of steps ahead in the journey than me. When I was in the US and moving back to India and wanted to do fundraise, I emailed 11 B2B founders, and I think
Okay.
only two got back. And the one who ended up advising me became my first angel, and he had, I think, raised his Series A just back then. So I think what happens when you have a couple of people ahead in the journey than you is that they open up their network to you. And I mean, I'm sure Abhilash and Maitra would agree that like if people reach out to us, we'd be more than happy to throw the ladder down and kind of get them the early connects. And then the connects lead to more connects, and that's how things go. But uh, I think in a VC world, what I've seen is that going via that reference just changes like entire perception versus like cold emailing. Sure, cold emailing works. I think for Capria, it was a cold email when we were raising, right? And it worked out. So, but again, we had some precedents before to showcase our previous investors to showcase. But in the early days, I think it's the mentors that really help you cross the line.
Let me put that one question on optics, right? So let's say again, I have all the investors' conversations lined up. Now, how do I put the optics so well? So one aspect of storylining. I mean, for example, Neil, you said the obsession factor was honestly just storytelling in a way that I just felt like there's no way, but I have to back this guy in some form or shape. So there's storytelling aspect to the optics, making you feel so confident that you have to back them. But there's also other optics of the round being intensive, competitive, the space being hot, where Abhilash you talked upon, I think you talked about a 4-day race and all of that, right? So how do you build that optics in some form or shape? What are the other hacks or things you've seen? So one of the things that I have seen is that storytelling aspect that you come in and I can see from the way you interact or the way you share data room or the way the fundraise is progressing and how fast that's going. I also have a general sense of VCs on how hot this deal is, right? We keep chatting, beautiful, can this happen? So we get a general sense on, hey, this is a hot deal. This is not a hot deal, this is a medium. We just generally have a sense, number one. Number two, from the storytelling, you just get fully drawn in some cases. You chat with this person and you really feel like, oh my god, I mean, whatever questions we throw at, they already have parallels and thought processes there that you just get drawn in. That's only been my thought process, which is curious on how do you build that optics in order to pull in these guys to act in 5 days or 2 weeks.
The honest answer, Saurabh, is that as you would very well know, right? Everyone is connected, especially in the investor space. So it's very, very hard to fake it. The only way to really do it is to plan it in such a way that you're having enough parallel conversations or having enough density. Faking it, I think, is very likely to be caught out.
I think there's one or two things that I would be very firm in not doing, and I'm happy to be corrected here. Often a VC will pass on you and say that, hey, but I can connect you to a couple more VCs. Beg them not to connect you to a couple more VCs, right? That is never going to go in the right way. Because the first question you will be asked is, why didn't you go for it, right? And at the end of the day, you can always have an answer that we didn't go because it's not in our portfolio's thought process, or we have a competing company, or our LPs want to do more US deals or whatever. But at the end of the day, everyone knows that a hot deal a VC is going to take, right? So if a VC passed on it,
I'll add one nuance on it that almost always not true. I'll give you an example. Like currently, we were doing a convertible round for somebody, and we couldn't invest because we were in Indian AIF Cat 2 that gave us a Cayman HQ. And it took a lot more time.
got it.
And I
Okay.
really wanted to make sure that that guy gets the money. He was a very high quality founder. It's deals like this that I pass on to some investor that add value to me. Like, that guy see like this guy can make good deals. There are 5 or 6 top investors in my mind whom I want to build goodwill with. And if I see a really hot founder, I'm connecting them to this 5 guys top one. And I've just connected him to one of the large growth investors. They're just chatting and whatnot, right? So whenever a reference come, it's always 3 filters that you put in. One, is it below or above your check size? That's why you couldn't do. That's understood, right? So a growth investor would pass on you a lower check because it's below my check size.
Yeah.
Or a consumer brand, which we don't do, happy to pass on. But if it's a space that you do, if it's a check size that you do, and then you're passing it on without any other reason, then the fact that you said applies, right? Like then you're just fucking with me giving. I'm not your priority investor. I'm not the guy who are building goodwill with. You just give me shitty deals.
And I think one more thing, one more advice over there would be like, I think one strong connect is like one strong vouch is better than 10 moderate vouches. So, like getting one person who really likes your company to ask their VC that, hey, these guys are great, go to them. I would optimize for that rather than getting 10 acquaintances to tell their VCs about you. Because that's really worked for us, right? We had um like one or two angels who really
Yeah.
liked us at the start.
Yeah.
And there were some angels who joined because they thought we were a good investment. But like the one or two angels who really liked us, like every word they said to someone else led to a very meaningful, high intent conversation. So so yeah, so like I get like loads of messages that, hey, give us a YC referral, or hey, please tell this VC about us. The point is, if I tell a VC about someone, it doesn't really mean much, right? But if I know you really well, I know your company really well, I want your company to succeed, and I'm going to a VC and saying that, you know what, I love these guys. Like if you believe me, you should believe them and you should vouch for them. That really means a lot in this space. So try to get those strong backers, even if they're lesser in number.
But Neil, you're saying something for it.
Yeah, I think to summarize a lot of like, what I've also learned in my journey is that if I were to explain this in one line, it's that the most interesting thing you will ever tell someone is often always the most honest, right? Um, and you can come across as raw and inexperienced, and that's okay. But as long as you're honest and the problem is real and the numbers are there, eventually you'll end up like, finding your way up there.
just one key question here, guys. Let's say you have again got 10, 15 inbounds, but to Maiteryas' point, you really want to reach out to this guy who's a strong referral, right? So do you wait for your angel to make that intro and not talk to the VP, associate, somebody who had reached out to you so that you want to go through a strong referral? Or do you take in that inbound, right? Like just chat and get it faster than wait for the inbounds. And also in terms of sequencing, I've heard founders say that go to your P2 funds first, refine your pitch and then go to P0, P1, etc. But even if you were to phase that out, would you still wait for all the founder references to Neal's point, wait for a couple of founders who are a couple of years ahead to make those intros? Or would you just go and reach out? Like, what is your take on how to reach out and have that conversation in a short window?
Yeah, I just think that uh, if if you're planning a particular timeline, it's better to try and get connects beforehand, in the sense that you can, you would be able to work through your network to know who are the right founders. As Neil also mentioned, it is not the hardest to find some founders maybe 2 3 steps ahead of you, who would generally be quite connected. So I would just be deliberate about that. Hey, saying that I ask intros on week 1 because I plan to probably have all these VC conversations by week 3 or 4. So yeah, I mean that's the way I would do it, at least.
I would say that inbound from a VC don't mean much. I mean, it's great that you're getting the connect, that you now have a direct line, but you should talk to them when you want to talk to them, regardless of when the inbound came, whether it came on Jan 1st or Jan 10th or Jan 20th. That shouldn't influence when you decide to have that conversation. What Abhilash was talking about, that in YC, they tell you not to talk to VCs. It's a very simple argument there. The earlier you talk to VCs, two things happen. One is the lesser ahead you are in your journey, of course, because you'll keep going more ahead. But secondly, the VC knows that there is so many days until demo day to evaluate 50 the different companies and do 50 more deep dives before choosing yes or no. So it makes sense for the VC to talk to you as early as possible. It would probably make sense for you to talk to the VC as closer to demo day as possible. So then what YC decided was, but however, at demo day, because there's so much crowd, founders do want to talk to VCs a little earlier. So what YC has now done is they're saying 14 days before demo day. They've decided that was the 17th November date that came to me. They just say that, hey, let's make like a pact that no one takes a single VC call before X day. And you just hope that everyone follows that pact. I think in our batch, I would say 80 to 90% companies definitely followed this pact. And that's like unity between founders that really plays well, because you still have those 1 or 2 weeks, which is giving VCs time to make their decisions, as well as giving you time to talk to a lot of VCs. But you're also sort of, and like to the extent that there were some really great partners who we wanted to raise from, who were saying that, hey, we're in the area, we'd love to meet. And our YC partner was like, just say no, just say we're busy.
Okay.
Right. And
Okay.
it was tough to send that mail. But that's what everyone did, because that's just like, you just
Standard.
you just have to be, yeah, you have to be standard. You have to all be together in this.
There's just one key question I want to cover. How did you split time across building your business versus raising? Like, raising for sometimes can take forever. Like Maitra, you said a couple of times that it had gone on forever. And then when do you decide to cut off and focus on business? And also, while running that fundraise process, it could be 4 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. How do you think about splitting that time?
Uh, well, I can take this one. I think firstly, it helps to have a co-founder. I think there is no two ways about it, so that one person can spend a lot more effort on fundraise. See, a YC like ecosystem makes it a lot easier in condensing it. But outside of such a, like a defined ecosystem, it's quite hard, right? In general, fundraisers can take a couple of months, much longer as well. I mean, seed stage can take 2 3 months. Uh, the honest thing is, it's very, very hard to do both together, because you would not be doing justice on either side. Uh, Co-founder is one way. Otherwise, you should have a strong enough team to pick up business when the founder is going out and fundraising, because
Yeah, I
there's no
strongly agree.
bridge to that.
I would say never have like a fundraising interview 4 to 5 p.m. and then a customer client meet at 5:30 p.m. I think that is disaster for success for both. So it is a
Yeah.
failure for both.
Yeah.
Recipe of failure for both. Sorry. Yeah, I think what, even when we were doing the long term fundraising, what I would probably suggest is, maybe if you know it's going to take a few months, 2 days a week or 1 day a week you dedicate for 4 or 5 fundraising pitches, or you're meeting 4 or 5 investors, and the remaining few days you decide to spend more on your product. Like, I really don't think 1 day can be split into 2 3 fundraising calls and 2 3 client calls. It takes a toll, because after, like, based on how the call, you're dealing with millions of dollars, right? So you, based on how the call went, that's going to be that's what's on your mind. After a call, some people ask you for references, for data, for pitches, for more meets, and all of that. So it's tough. And having a co-founder, I mean, I told my team up front that, for the next 2 weeks, assume that I'm completely out, right? Unless like the top 3 customers send us a mail that we are switching away from you, it's unlikely that I will be pulled in for any sort of work. If you can do that, I mean, that's the best thing to do. If you can't, well, then I would say split it in a way that, you can at least detach your fundraising mindset from your day-to-day work.
No, awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. I've taken a lot of your time. This is super helpful. I hope it's super helpful for all the founders I share with as well.